Filmmaking at any level costs money, but it doesn't have to cost millions. At any level, the size of your ideas is almost always going to be bigger than the size of your wallet. Today, there are more creative solutions to the dreaded budget problem than ever. In this series, we'll look at how you can most effectively make a small-scale movie with large-scale ambitions. This is Low Budget Filmmaking, Episode 1, Pre-Production. Step 1 in low budget filmmaking, subscribe to StudioBinder to get to know the craft like the back of your clapperboard. Tighten your belts, let's get indie.
Okay, cut. You gotta bring passion to it. A message, it's a message.
This is for the birds.
Low budget filmmaking has existed long before there was any type of filmmaking. Cinema was born among innovators with little more than a camera and some film. It is only as movies became more popular did budgets balloon. But even as Hollywood productions got more and more expensive, the scrappy and independent filmmaking scene has persisted, acting as a hotbed of experimentation and rising talent. This is truer than ever in today's film industry. Many filmmakers now start their careers not by climbing the ranks of traditional Hollywood systems, but by creating work outside of the system that can then get noticed. Independent filmmaker Jim Cummings explains.
We're assuming that the best screenplay wins, but all it takes is going to a cinema or just getting on Netflix and seeing that good ideas are not the thing that's getting made. Like, it has nothing to do with the quality of the script that these movies are getting made. And the way that you can make it work is by going in the middle and saying, okay, nobody's going to help us, but there's an open sore in the market where you can make something for a small budget. I didn't go to school for producing, but I was good on the phone and I just started doing it.
But of course, making a movie is rarely as easy as picking up a camera and hitting record. More often than not, a low-budget film still needs a budget, a crew, and a cast. Let's look at what goes into getting a low-budget movie off the ground before the camera starts rolling, beginning with scripting. Of course, you never want to be hyper-conscious of budget limitations while writing a script. But it is important to be realistic about what can be achieved within your means. Writing a script with an Avatar scope for a Blair Witch Project budget will likely end in frustration or a compromised final product.
Everything will get back tomorrow.
I gotta work. I'm supposed to be at work tomorrow at 9.
I know.
Low-budget scripts tend to have a limited number of characters and locations, making it easier to cast and produce. But there are exceptions to this rule. Slacker, for example, has a massive ensemble cast.
Kind of working up a harmonious relationship with them in equilibrium.
Richard Linklater pulled this off by writing about a community he was intimately acquainted with, the outcasts and weirdos of Austin, Texas. This gave him easier access to both cast and locations. Writing to your strengths as a filmmaker is also key. Gareth Edwards' concept for Monsters, for example, doesn't seem like it would be feasible on a low budget. But Edwards was a seasoned visual effects artist, so he knew he would be able to pull off the sci-fi elements at a lower cost.
Are you sure it's dead?
Yeah, it's dead. Stay here.
You can also write to your limitations, using them as creative fuel rather than compromises. In We're All Going to the World's Fair, for example, Jane Schoenbrunn uses the small cast and number of locations to comment on online isolation and connection.
It's like I can feel myself leaving my body. Like it's making me someone else.
Once your script is written, it's time for the hard part, financing. Getting any amount of money for a movie can be difficult, even if it's just a small amount.
We borrow money and then for years we pay out on the installment plan.
Traditional routes to financing like studios are extremely difficult to land, especially for non-commercial ideas or first-time filmmakers. As such, many low-budget productions seek financing from independent investors.
Thank you.
Emma Seligman describes obtaining her budget for a Shiva baby.
None of us had ever made a feature. And, we tried all the traditional ways of going to production companies, or I guess traditional within the US, like, going to our mentors and our past professors, and everyone said no. So eventually we just begged people for money and, asked people if they wanted to start a career in like film investment and just went to everybody we knew. It was the toughest thing from short to feature was just financing.
Hey, I'm really sorry. It's fine.
Obtaining money from private investors, too, is no walk in the park. The hard truth is that putting money into an indie movie by and large is not a good financial investment. The chances of return for an investor are low and depend on a myriad of variables. And so, a pitch that revolves around return on investment will likely not convince anyone who is financially savvy.
Just a bad investment, that's all. Bad investment.
Instead, private investment is typically secured through a pitch that revolves around creative vision and potential cultural impact. This way, even if an investor isn't confident they'll make their money back, they can be assured that the project will be something they can be proud to be attached to and will carry cultural cachet for them. Another fundraising method favored by many low-budget filmmakers is crowdfunding. On sites like Seed and Spark, Kickstarter, and Indiegogo, filmmakers can pitch their movies to the public, utilizing trailers, posters, BTS footage, and merchandise for people who decide to invest. Crowdfunded investments can also be treated like other forms of private investment, where crowdfunders can get points in a project and see money back if the movie profits. Jim Cummings explains this approach.
For Thunder Road, we ran a Kickstarter campaign and we raised $34,000, and that was just like giving out t-shirts and posters and stuff to people that wanted to see the short film become a feature. And then we just ran a crowd equity campaign, which is something new to us. I had never seen any films do that, but it was essentially what we were doing already. Like, we were selling points of our company to different people that wanted to help finance the movies. And so I was like, well, why don't we just open it up to the public instead of the 6 film financiers that we know? And we raised $350,000 in the first 20 days.
Typically, this approach requires either social media marketing savvy, where a project's pitch can go viral, or the creators behind the project already have bona fides. In Cummings' case, for example, he was adapting his Sundance-winning short film.
Sorry, I don't know if I can keep going.
Another option for funding is one which is typically advised against: self-financing.
I'm not even supposed to be here today.
There have been famous success stories, such as Kevin Smith's Clerks. But by and large, self-financing is extremely risky and puts the financial burden on the filmmaker.
Pack of cigarettes?
But there are still some advocates for this approach, including Mark Duplass.
It wasn't an integrity move. It was like, fine, we'll just go. And what I was lucky enough to do is I had just signed my first writing deal to write something. So we took the money, some of the money we made from that, put it into Baghead, and then we went there, and then, we ended up selling the movie for, about 15 times what we made it for. That's where Jay and I were like, hold on. What we thought was the last-ditch solution of we'll finance it ourselves is actually the best. I didn't have to deal with anybody. We might have a model here.
Typically, unless a filmmaker is coming from a place of financial success, self-financing is reserved for what are dubbed no-budget movies, where a budget is not more than a few $1,000s. Anything under $1 million, however, is still considered to be extremely low budget. And so, even with financing in place, you'll need to maximize economic efficiency in pre-production, beginning with how you build your crew. Generally, on a low-budget set, no one is there solely for the paycheck, because otherwise they'd be somewhere else. This means that when you're hiring your team, you'll need to prioritize people who are passionate about your project and who have a vested interest in seeing it come out as good as possible. It is the passion typically coming from or created by a group of like-minded people that characterizes successful low-budget projects. John Waters discusses how he assembled the team for his early films.
We went to downtown, right to Baltimore, where there was poor kids, redneck kids that were also rebels from their culture, gay people that were rebels from gay culture. They thought gay society had too much rules. They didn't even like gay society. And beatniks. And all that humor, we were united through marijuana, rage, defiance, and a sense of humor. And it became this little nucleus of this group insanity where we made these movies.
That's it.
This remains true for even established filmmakers on low-budget movies. David Lowery describes his approach to making the ultra-low-budget movie a ghost story.
The rules I had for making this movie was that I only wanted to make it with friends. I wanted to just keep a very close family of friends together to just make this in secret in Texas without a big crew, not a lot of people knowing about it.
So tell me what happens if Beethoven's writing his Ninth Symphony and suddenly he wakes up one day and realizes that God doesn't exist.
A small budget typically means that you will be working with a small crew, so it's important to take stock of exactly who you will need on set before hiring people. In other words, avoid hiring positions simply because they exist on other sets. For Steven Soderbergh on Unsane, a smaller crew was a plus. He notes that, "We had a really small crew. The camera department was the assistant cameraman, and the camera packet fit, all of it, in a backpack. There's a very tangible effect when you're traveling that light, in terms of doing things and moving from this location to that location."
What am I doing in here?
I need to look through your bag.
Why?
Don't worry, you're not being singled out. I look through everyone's bag. It's procedure.
Many positions in your crew will likely be doing you a favor, particularly the lower level positions. So you may need to schedule around higher paying jobs, or be prepared to bring in different people to fill in positions from day to day. David Lynch took this approach with cinematographers on Eraserhead.
Fred started shooting after that we'd been shooting for 9 months. So there was another cameraman that shot for 9 months, then Fred came in, but Fred shot for 2.5 years.
Building a crew is only half the battle. For a narrative feature, you'll also need a cast.
It's been quite a long time. A lot of jobs.
Like with hiring crew members, casting for a low-budget film can also require ingenuity. A filmmaker must be able to make a case to an actor that they should take a risk by starring in their movie. After all, if they agree, they will likely not have the amenities available on larger movies, nor will they be paid much.
Zed's dead, baby. Zed's dead.
For this reason, it can be difficult to get a bigger name actor to sign on to a low-budget project. But anything is possible, especially with a personalized pitch that happens to come at the right time. David Lowery explains how he got Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara for A Ghost Story.
It wasn't like reaching out to agents saying, here's an offer for an actor, will they accept it? This was just me sending them text messages saying, hey, I think I might make this thing. I'd love for you to be a part of it. And they both thankfully were.
But a big-name actor isn't the only way to get attention from a casting decision. Filmmakers may cast people who are well-known outside of acting. In Red Rocket, for example, Sean Baker cast Simon Rex, who didn't have an extensive acting career, but was well known for his days on MTV.
I like your stuff too, man. You and Snoop are the homies, aren't you?
Yeah, we homies.
All right.
That's all that
hey.
is.
For Halloween, John Carpenter and producer Deborah Hill took yet another approach, casting Jamie Lee Curtis not just because she was right for the role, but also because of her family. Explains Hill. I knew casting Jamie Lee would be great publicity for the film because her mother was in Psycho. But of course, a recognizable name isn't a necessity for the success of a movie. Sometimes an actor is simply perfect for the part. Many low-budget filmmakers will work with non-actors. This allows them to keep the cast price tag low, while potentially increasing the authenticity of the movie.
On her arm, on her hands and everything, it was like hair, like a real dark, almost black hair.
In Primer, for example, Shane Carruth cast many of the bit parts with people who actually worked the job they were portraying. He explains, everyone in the film other than David and myself is either a family member, a friend, or the actual person who works at that location. Working with non-actors may even be less of a budgetary decision and more of a creative one. Chloe Zhao's film The Writer is loosely based on the story of Brady Jandreau, who is playing the protagonist. Zhao explains the process.
It's a little bit more like how much you want the person that plays the character to immerse in the story and the world. How much freedom you're going to give them to be who they are and to interact with the world you create that's so real to them. And some of my favorite filmmakers work that way. If it happens to be someone who's acted before, great. If not, that's fine too.
Thanks, Victor. Hey, don't give up.
Above all else, your primary consideration when casting a low-budget movie should be the same as any other budget tier. Is the person right for the role?
So guess what?
What? I don't know.
I'm pregnant.
Low-budget filmmaking isn't easy, but it's far from impossible.
I'm married!
With some creativity and grit, anyone can get a movie off the ground. You just have to start somewhere. And that somewhere may be StudioBinder's pre-production services, which has software for everything from screenwriting to scheduling to storyboarding. On our next episode, we'll look at how to stretch your budget when cameras start rolling during production. Until then, make every penny count.